I knew her smile carried stories, but I never expected one of them to be about me. I met her on one of those days that felt ordinary until it suddenly wasn't. The afternoon light was soft, almost sleepy, drifting through the windows with a warm gold that made everything look a little kinder than usual. I wasn't expecting anything significant to happen. I was focused on my own plans, my own routine, my own quiet thoughts. And then she walked in. She didn't enter dramatically. She moved with an ease that came from knowing herself, the kind of confidence that doesn't need to be loud. Her steps were unhurried, her posture relaxed, and there was this calm presence surrounding her, like she carried her own weather with her. Warm, composed, quietly magnetic. Her smile was the first thing I noticed, not because it was bright or bold, but because it felt personal. The kind of smile that makes you think she's seen more than she says, felt more than she reveals. A smile with stories in it. She greeted the room politely, her voice low, smooth, carrying a softness that stayed in the air even after she stopped speaking. When her eyes finally met mine, something shifted. Just a small pause, but enough for me to feel it. She held my gaze for a moment longer than a stranger usually would. Long enough for me to register the warmth in her eyes, the slight curve in her lips, the unspoken recognition of something neither of us could explain yet. She walked over, offering a light, friendly hello, and when she shook my hand, her fingers were warm, soft, confident. Not rushed, not distant, just steady. And for some reason, that steadiness went straight through me. As she spoke, I found myself paying attention to things I rarely notice. The gentle rhythm of her breathing when she paused, the faint scent of something floral in her hair, the way she brushed her thumb lightly against the side of her mug while listening. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She simply existed in a way that made everyone else slow down. At one point, she laughed at something someone said, a soft, melodic sound that felt completely genuine. And when she did, she lightly touched my forearm as if sharing the moment with me specifically. The touch wasn't deliberate or flirtatious. It was natural, but it was enough to send a quiet, unexpected warmth through me. I tried to keep my composure, to stay grounded, but the truth was simple. She had presence. A presence that made the noise around us fade just a little. Later, when the conversation shifted across the room and I found myself watching her from short distance, she caught me looking. Most people would have pretended not to notice. Not her. She held my gaze again, steady, warm, and then she smiled. Not the polite smile from earlier. A different one. Softer. Slightly tilted, as if she knew exactly what she was doing to me, even though she'd barely spoken more than a few sentences. And in that single moment, that simple smile, I felt something I couldn't name yet. Something quiet, but unmistakable. The kind of feeling that told me, this woman, she carries secrets. And somehow, without meaning to, she just opened one. After that first day, our conversations began almost accidentally. A comment here, a short exchange there, nothing dramatic, nothing planned. But somehow, we always ended up near each other, talking about something neither of us intended to bring up. It started with small questions. Simple things. How's your day going? Did you finish that project you mentioned? You look tired? Long morning? Her voice always carried that calm, grounded tone that made even ordinary words feel meaningful. And she really listened. When I spoke, she angled her body toward me, her attention steady, her expression soft but focused. It made me feel like whatever I said mattered. One of the first things I noticed was how comfortable she was with silence. She didn't rush to fill the pauses. Sometimes she just nodded slowly, eyes drifting to the side as she processed something I said, like she was letting the moment breathe. And somehow, that made me open up more than I intended. The physical tension between us grew quietly, almost unnoticed at first. Sometimes when she handed me something, a pen, a book, a cup, her fingers brushed mine. Light, warm, unintentional, yet unmistakably intimate in the way it lingered for half a heartbeat too long. Other times, when she laughed, she'd rest her hand briefly on my arm or shoulder, her touch gentle, confident, but with a softness that felt far more personal than casual. She smelled faintly of jasmine or something close to it, warm, floral, comforting. Every time she leaned in slightly to hear me better, that scent drifted over me, subtle but impossible to ignore. These weren't romantic moments in the obvious sense. They were small, everyday interactions. But when the right person shares them with you, ordinary things can become something strangely powerful. One afternoon, as we stood talking near the window, the sunlight caught the faint lines near her eyes, not in a way that made her look older, but in a way that hinted at a life fully lived. A woman who had laughed deeply, hurt quietly, survived things she didn't immediately talk about. Her beauty wasn't loud or fragile. It was grounded, real, and undeniably graceful. She watched me with that same steady gaze. And sometimes when she smiled at something I said, it was the kind of smile that dipped just a little at one corner, a smile that looked like she knew something I didn't. There was a moment that stayed with me. We were sitting side by side, talking about nothing particularly personal, when she suddenly grew thoughtful. She paused, looked down at her hands, then glanced at me with a softness I wasn't expecting. "You're easy to talk to," she said quietly. Her knee brushed mine just lightly. She didn't move away. I didn't know how to respond at first. Not because I was flustered, but because she said it with a sincerity that made my chest feel unexpectedly warm. The tension between us was still subtle, an undercurrent rather than a wave, but real enough that I felt it every time she looked at me a certain way, every time she touched me without thinking, every time our conversations drifted later than they should have. Small conversations, small moments, but slowly, quietly, undeniably, they were pulling us closer. There's a moment in every slow connection where something shifts, not because of a dramatic confession, but because someone accidentally lets the truth slip through a crack they didn't know was open. For us, that moment came on a quiet evening, when the world outside felt muted and heavy, as if it was gently encouraging people to be honest. We were sitting at a small table, the soft hum of distant conversation filling the background. She looked composed as always, back straight, fingers loosely wrapped around a warm cup, eyes steady. But there was something different about her posture that night, a slight heaviness in her shoulders, a faint restlessness in her breathing. At first, she tried to hide it. She asked me questions, listened as I talked, even smiled in all the right places. But the smile didn't reach her eyes the way it usually did. Eventually, when the conversation lulled, she exhaled slowly, the kind of breath people release only when something has been sitting on their chest too long. "I've been tired," she said finally. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't meant to be emotional. But the way she said it, quiet, honest, unguarded, made something inside me still. She looked away as if unsure whether she should continue. Her fingers tightened around her cup. Silence stretched between us, not uncomfortable, but raw in a way that felt new. I didn't push her. I just waited. And maybe that's why she continued, because someone finally gave her space to. "It's been a long year," she said softly. "Longer than I expected. I think I forgot how to breathe properly through it." Her voice dipped on the last words, barely above a whisper. In that moment, she didn't look like the confident, graceful woman everyone admired. She looked real, human, a little fragile in a way she would never intentionally show. I felt something tighten in my chest. Not pity, not heroism, just a deep, instinctive urge to be present for her. Without overthinking, I reached across the table and placed my hand gently over hers. She froze for half a second, surprised. Her skin was warm against mine, her fingers still curled around her cup. Then, slowly, she loosened her grip and let her hand slide from the cup to meet mine fully. Her fingers didn't just touch mine, they intertwined. Softly, deliberately. She didn't look up at first. She stared at our hands for a moment, as if trying to understand what she had just allowed herself to do. When she finally lifted her eyes to mine, there was no mask left. No kerfelkimpoche, just a quiet openness and a vulnerability she hadn't shown anyone in a long time. "You make things feel lighter," she whispered. I don't know why. Her thumb brushed against my hand. A small, involuntary movement that said more than her words. I didn't say anything immediately. I just kept my hand around hers, warm and steady, letting her know she wasn't alone in that moment. It was the first time she let me see the part of her she kept hidden from everyone else. And even though nothing dramatic happened, no kiss, no grand declarations, something undeniably shifted between us. A door she didn't mean to open stayed open. Some moments don't announce themselves. They arrive quietly, slipping into the space between two people before either of them realizes something irreversible is happening. That night was exactly like that. Unplanned, unhurried, and somehow more intimate than anything we'd shared before. We stayed later than usual after everyone else had left. The air outside was cooler, touched with the soft hush of evening. Streetlights cast long, gentle shadows across the ground, and the sky was settling into a deep blue that felt almost protective. It was the kind of night that made the world feel smaller, safer, closer. We walked side by side, not speaking at first. Our steps matched naturally, her shoulder brushing mine every few seconds. Each time it happened, it sent a quiet warmth through me, the kind of warmth that wasn't loud or thrilling but grounding. After a while, she stopped near a railing overlooking a quiet street. She leaned against it lightly, crossing her arms, her gaze drifting into the distance. I stood beside her, close but not touching. There was a stillness in her eyes, a depth I hadn't seen before. The glow of a nearby lamp softened the lines of her face, highlighting the calm strength she carried so naturally, and the exhaustion she tried so hard to hide. "I've been thinking," she said softly. I turned to look at her fully. "About what?" She hesitated, not because she didn't know, but because she wasn't used to saying the truth out loud. "About you," she finally whispered, her voice almost fragile. The words lingered in the air, warm and trembling. She took a slow breath, then looked up at me. Really looked. Her eyes didn't blink away or shift to the ground. They held steady, searching mine for something she didn't quite know how to ask for. "You have no idea," she started, then paused as if gathering courage. When she spoke again, her voice was lower, softer, like she was speaking from someplace deeper inside herself. "You have no idea how easily you disarm me." The words landed with a weight I wasn't prepared for. Not heavy, honest. Her arm brushed mine again, but this time she didn't draw back. She let it stay, her warmth pressing lightly against me. Slowly, almost shyly, she lifted her hand and rested it on my chest, right over my heartbeat. Her palm was warm, her touch gentle but deliberate. My breath caught, not because it was bold, but because it was vulnerable. She wasn't trying to seduce me. She was letting herself be seen. I covered her hand with mine, fingers curling gently around her smaller ones. She exhaled shakily, her shoulders relaxing as if she'd been holding something in for far too long. Her gaze softened, her lips parting slightly as though she wanted to say more, but didn't trust her voice. So we stood there, close, quiet, connected by something neither of us had planned. No quis, no dramatic imbras. Just the warmth of her hand on my chest and mine wrapped around it. The silence around us filled with every unspoken truth lingering between us. It was the moment her guard finally lowered, and mine did too. The days after that night felt different, almost suspended, like we were both walking carefully around a moment neither of us could undo. Not because anything inappropriate happened, but because something honest did. She had let me in, and now she didn't know what to do with that truth. The shift started subtly. She still greeted me with the same warm voice, still listened with that soft attentiveness that made me feel seen, but something in her was guarded again. Not closed, just cautious. Like she was afraid of stepping too close to a line she wasn't sure she could cross without losing something of herself. Her eyes gave it away first. Before, they held mine easily, comfortably. Now her gaze flickered away too quickly. Not cold, just uncertain. Like she was replaying that night in her mind and worrying she'd revealed more than she meant to. I didn't mention it. I didn't want to push her into any corner. But I felt it. The slight pause in her smile, the hesitation in her touch, the way her shoulders tensed when our conversations drifted into anything personal. One afternoon, we found ourselves alone again, sitting across from each other with cups of coffee neither of us were really drinking. She kept smoothing her thumb along the rim of her mug, a small, repetitive movement that told me she was deep in her thoughts. "You've been quiet," I said gently. She stopped the motion, her hand going still. She didn't look up immediately, and when she did, her expression held a softness mixed with something tender and tired. "I don't want to confuse you," she whispered. Her voice wasn't sharp. It wasn't distant. It was careful, like she'd been rehearsing the sentence. "You're not," I said softly. She gave a small, almost sad smile. "I might be confusing myself." She rested her elbows on the table, pressing her fingers lightly against her forehead. Her shoulders rose with a slow breath, the kind of breath someone takes when they're trying not to let emotion spill out. "It's just," she tried again, her voice quieter, "I haven't let someone get close to me in a long time. I don't trust myself with it anymore." There was no drama in her confession. It wasn't a plea or an excuse. It was a truth she had been holding tightly, one that weighed more than she wanted to admit. I reached across the table, moving slowly so she had the chance to pull away if she wanted. She didn't. My hand covered hers gently, my thumb brushing the back of her fingers, not pushing, not demanding, just offering presence. "You don't have to figure everything out," I murmured. "Just let me be here." Her lips parted slightly, her breath catching at the reassurance. Then, in a movement so small it almost didn't register, she shifted her hand beneath mine, turning it so our fingers could lace together. Her grip was delicate at first, then tightened, like she was afraid to let go. She didn't look me in the eyes immediately. Instead, she stared at our hands, the way they fit, the way the warmth spread between them, as if trying to understand how something so simple could feel so dangerously comforting. When she finally lifted her gaze, there was no mask this time, no distance, just honesty wrapped in uncertainty. "I'm trying," she whispered. And then, even softer, I just don't know how to do this slowly." I squeezed her hand gently, reassuringly. "Then we'll go slow," I said, "as slow as you need." Her shoulders eased. The tension that had been holding her captive for days loosened, not completely, but enough. She leaned forward slightly, not into an embrace, not into anything dramatic, just close enough that our foreheads nearly touched. A quiet step toward me, a quiet surrender to herself. She hadn't pulled away, not really. She just needed to be reminded she didn't have to walk this alone. There's a difference between someone accepting your presence and someone allowing themselves to rest in it. The shift happens slowly, gently, almost invisibly, until one day the distance that once felt necessary simply isn't there anymore. That moment arrived for us on a calm, unremarkable afternoon. We hadn't planned to meet. It just happened. A coincidence of timing, or maybe something quieter and more deliberate than coincidence. She was sitting outside, in a corner where the sunlight fell just right, not too bright, not too warm. Her posture was relaxed, shoulders slightly slouched in a way that told me she wasn't trying to keep herself together today. She looked peaceful, but also a little unguarded, like she was finally breathing without thinking about it. When she noticed me approaching, her expression softened instantly, not with surprise, not with hesitation, but with a gentleness that felt like an invitation. "Sit with me," she asked. Her voice was calm, steady, with a warmth that reached me before her words fully settled. I took the spot beside her, close but not crowding her. The bench was narrow enough that our knees brushed lightly. She didn't shift away. If anything, she seemed to settle a little closer, as if finding comfort in the closeness rather than avoiding it. For a while, we didn't talk. We didn't need to. The quiet belonged to us, a shared silence that didn't require explanation. Eventually, she sighed softly, tilting her head until it rested lightly against my shoulder. The touch was hesitant at first, a gentle test to see if she was crossing some invisible boundary. When I didn't move away, when I relaxed into her instead, she let her weight settle fully. The moment felt fragile and incredibly sincere. I wrapped an arm around her, slow and careful, giving her every chance to pull back if she wasn't ready. But she didn't. She leaned in, her body warm against mine, her breathing steadying as if she'd been waiting for this without knowing it. Her hand found mine on her lap. She traced small, absent circles on my palm with her fingertips. Not flirtatious, not intentional. Just present, just honest. After a long, quiet stretch, she spoke, her voice softer than I'd ever heard it. "You make me feel safe," she murmured, in a way I forgot was possible. The words felt like a confession, gentle and trembling. I turned slightly, letting my cheek rest against the top of her head. Her hair brushed my skin, soft and faintly scented with something warm, like honey and jasmine. "You're safe with me," I said quietly. "You always are." Her fingers tightened around mine, holding with a steadiness that surprised even her. She wasn't trembling. She wasn't running from the moment or questioning it. She was choosing it. After everything, the hesitation, the distance, the quiet fear she carried in her chest, she was finally letting herself lean into someone. Not out of weakness, not out of need, but out of trust. She stayed against me for a long time, her breathing syncing with mine, her hand woven into my own as if it belonged there. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a declaration. It was something deeper, a quiet acceptance, a quiet belonging, a moment that told me she wasn't just letting me in, she was choosing to stay. Some stories end loudly, with dramatic declarations and overwhelming passion. Ours didn't. It settled gently, like something that had always been meant to find its own calm. After that afternoon, when she let herself rest against me, something between us shifted in the softest, most natural way. There was no sudden change, no abrupt intensity. Instead, there was an ease, a quiet understanding that didn't need to be spoken out loud. She began showing up in small, but unmistakable ways. A morning message from her that simply said, "I hope today is kind to you." A warm touch on my shoulder when she passed behind me. A soft laugh she saved only for moments we shared. And I found myself doing the same without trying. Bringing her a coffee just the way she liked it without asking. Noticing when she seemed tired and sitting beside her before she had to say anything. Listening, really listening when she talked, even if the subject wasn't heavy. Our routines intertwined in ways that felt effortless. Not a relationship defined by labels or expectations, but by presence, steady, warm, quietly loyal. One evening, we took a slow walk together. The sky had faded into that in-between shade. Not fully night, not fully day. The air was cool enough to make her draw her scarf a little closer, and as she did, I instinctively reached out to adjust it gently. My fingers brushed her jaw as I did, a soft, natural touch. She held my wrist lightly, not stopping me, just acknowledging the moment. When she let go, her fingers slid down to my hand, warm and sure, intertwining with mine. We walked like that, side by side, close enough that our arms touched with every step, peaceful in a way that felt earned. At one point, she stopped and turned toward me. The streetlight above cast a soft halo around her, illuminating the calm confidence she always carried and the tenderness she now let me see without hesitation. "You know," she said quietly, "I used to think some parts of me were meant to stay hidden forever." Her thumb traced slow circles against my palm. "But with you, I don't feel the need to hide anything." The simplicity of it hit deeper than any grand confession could have. Because it wasn't about romance in the dramatic sense. It was about trust, about choosing each other in small moments that mattered more than loud declarations ever could. I stepped closer, gently brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear. My knuckles skimmed her cheek, warm and impossibly soft. She leaned into the touch, naturally, instinctively, like it was something she no longer questioned. I wrapped my arms around her, pulling her slowly into my chest. She slipped her arms around my waist in return, her cheek settling over my heartbeat. She exhaled, long, steady, content, as though she had finally arrived somewhere she didn't know she'd been walking toward. We stayed like that, held in a quiet embrace, the world around us fading until there was only warmth, breath, and the steady reassurance of two people no longer pretending they weren't connected. When she finally looked up, her eyes were soft and full of a warmth that didn't need to be named. Her smile still carried secrets, but now those secrets felt shared. Safe. Ours. We continued walking hand in hand. No rush, no uncertainty, just a gentle, steady future unfolding one warm, ordinary moment at a time.